Hi and welcome everyone to our webinar today on audits. So how can you go from an audit strain to an actual competitive advantage? Today we want to show you a bit how digital checklists can secure compliance and drive performance in your company. So today with me is Daniel, our co-founder and CEO. My name is Sarah. I'm a product marketing manager here at Operations One, and again, we welcome you. But before we start with introducing you to how it is that you can improve your audit habits, I have a very first question for you, actually. So the first question that I would like everyone to answer is, how do you currently experience audits in your company? Is it primarily a very mandatory exercise, creating a lot of stress? Are they, pretty well managed, but time-consuming to prepare? Are they somewhat routine and standardized, or do you really not have audits at all, or very few of them? So let's see what it is. Give it a few more seconds. All right. Okay. So yeah, a lot of you are saying that they are, as of today, well managed, but actually very time consuming to prepare. So that's a good thing. Then let's see how we can change that. Daniel.
Yes, so also hello from my side. So happy to be here today. So to show you a little bit about Operations One and how we can simplify your work around audits, and to have a look also how we see it at the company side. We want to show you today how you can move from this perception as audits as very stressful, as with little benefits, so as mandatory exercise that you have to fulfill. We want to show you today how you can this flip around from a lot of stress, little benefit, to little stress, a lot of benefit. Because today, in today's world, it's very important to have standardized processes and also to have it transparent and also checked. And with this, we have another survey, right, Sarah?
We do. And I promise it's the last one. If you do have actually any questions afterwards, feel free to ask them in the chat or in the Q&A section. I'm sorry, forgot to mention that earlier. But let's maybe jump into the second question that I have for you today. What is your biggest challenge today regarding audits and compliance? So here you have a multiple choice possibility. Let's see what you see. Right. All right, we see a lot of manual effort, a lot of follow-up work. All right, great. So yeah, let's maybe close it here. So a lot of those answers are really correlating to what we see and hear from our customers and also from prospects that are talking to us, that there is a lot of follow-up work and also preparation work necessary to have proper audits and to ensure compliance. So yeah, again, Daniel, let's see how we can maybe flip that around.
Yes, perfect. So before we start into the topic, let me give you a little bit of background about Operations One. Some of you might already know us, what I see here from the participants, some of our fresh. So Operations One, we're a software company based in Frankfurt, Germany here. We deliver software for the connected shop floor, so to make the life of the shop floor worker easier. And one of these use cases is also related to audits. This is what I want to show you today, but also give you an overview of what we else can do. We are mainly focused in manufacturing companies with a size of 1,000 employees plus. So the more complex companies, this is where we feel most comfortable. We are having also possibility to integrate to all your leading systems and delivering a very cool software platform to improve your productivity. And this is also what our mission is. Basically, we want to improve the productivity of manufacturing companies by simplifying the shop floor operations. So by running all the operational processes, and this might include checklist, might include work instruction, might include audits and so on one central platform. So this is basically what we are doing. And when we have a look around that one, what is driving us, it's also, today's world in manufacturing. And this is like a snapshot. This is not just related to audits. This can also be seen in different other areas on the shop floor, that you have a lot of paper still there. And when it comes to audits, especially, a lot of effort, manual effort of document handling, still paper-based. Documentation is also a little bit confusing to the people, and also a lot of work afterwards to digitize that one. And also, to have a possibility to adapt the processes. It's quite hard right now when you have all this process documentation that way as we see it here. I don't know, probably you are smiling. I hope you're smiling in front of your screen right now, that you say, yes, it looks like a little bit on our end. This is what we experienced when we talked with customers and with prospects. And it's quite interesting. Why is it like this? Because when we have a look at manufacturing companies in the past years, there were a lot of digitalization, a lot of investments, especially in the planning layer. So here we see it. You have the ERP, the heavy ME system projects and so on. And a lot of money was put into that one. But actually, where the daily work is happening on the shop floor level, still processes and also including audits are run on Word, Excel, PowerPoint, on own build solutions, on paper even. And this is where we see a big gap between like the planning layer and the execution level on the shop floor. And what we deliver as Operations One is as I said, a modular platform that digitizes this gap, that covers the last mile to the worker by, on the one hand side, providing standards, and on the other hand, also to send back this information, for example, to leading systems. Also to capture tasks that you need to carry out on the shop floor, deviations and so on, work on this to improve the communication even on the shop floor level. And this is how we see the future. And this is also which is very important also for your audits, to have them in a digital way, because audits, they more or less like have two different angles, two different dimensions, and are very important for you as a company. On the one hand side, we have the internal side of audits, and these are mainly like audits in order to make sure to have a look on your processes, to discover weaknesses in your processes, to be able to improve them, and also to prepare your processes or your operations for an external audit. So this is like also the example I will show you later on, to give your people on the shop floor a tool that they can check up their processes on a routine way in order to identify these weaknesses and then to improve them. And also be ready if somebody from external party wants to see what was carried out, all the guidelines, and like make sure that all the documentation is appropriate, is up to date and so on. And so that's why we see different ways of external audits. So this might be from a customer, this might be from an authority, and they want to see whether you follow the rules, whether you make sure that all the people are supervised and so on. And this in the end can have very severe consequences if you are having not that into order, because it might be that you're not getting an order from your customer. It might be also that you don't get a certification. And this is very important to have that in mind, that audits are not just for the sake of checking checkboxes, but also to make sure that you get all these approvals from external parties. And when we have a look at what we can provide you is both dimensions. So on the one hand side, we are very much also on the practical internal way to give your company the possibility to create step-by-step checklists and so on, and plan them for activities. So this is also what we see here on the next slide, is that you can create digital standards. You can plan an audit. We will see that in a second. You can then, of course, execute it step by step for the worker. And then you can also like handle deviations. So whenever we saw that also in the survey, when you have like a deviation from that, what happens then? What is the follow-up task? And who is responsible for that? This is also something which is in line with the audit activities. And of course, with operations one, you can easily set new standards. When you discover something on the shop floor where you need to, for example, adapt and adjust a procedure, or you want to even, or in itself, want to change the audit, you can, by drag and drop, you can create new workflows with our software and then directly ship it to the production. And this is like the full circle of our operations of our software. And we just don't want to show you this. I also want to show it live in the software. So for that, I would share my screen
Sorry.
now.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, so I think you should now see my screen.
Yes.
Sarah, will see it? Yes,
Yeah,
perfect. So what do we
you.
see here? So this is the perspective of one of your shop floor workers. And here we have an audit routine, like with an respective checklist for an internal Q audit. And I can, from this perspective, I can just start it off and you see it's planned, it has a due date and so on. And I start it off now. And this is how it works. So here you see a step-by-step description on the one hand side, also with explanatory information, so that you also can give your worker more guidance on how the check should be carried out. And here you see also the different interaction types. So it's ask for, please choose your site. Where are you located? Here I have, for example, a drop down. I can select I'm in Munich. And it's also something where you can create these interactions very easily and then modify them also to choose for a department. I'm here maybe in the production area. And then you can also add like free text fields here. You could also scan like a QR code for a respective code or like a specific detailed information. And then you move through this documentation step by step. And for that, for example, here it's the question, and you can also use it that way that you say, okay, do we have defects or not? And if I click no, everything's fine. You could also say, okay, it's okay, but with remarks. And here you see, for example, that we have this like conditional field that you can add an observation here, or you can, even if I do this, you see it's going into critical. So defects identified, and here it also says, okay, create a new pre-filled task. And here you see also we offer an AI assistant also for the follow-up, that I now can also create a task out of this one. And this means that attached to this checkpoint, I will create a task. And here it's also looking for a solution. In this case, we do not have a solution from the AI assistant, but I could, for example, now set this to high priority here. And the follow-up task goes to a specific user or to a user group. So I could, for example, now inform like the team lead or one specific area of people that should work on this defect here. And you can also see that this one, for example, is classified, this checkpoint here, that you have an opportunity to filter all your open tasks, for example. I could even add a picture to that one. So right now you see that I shared my screen here, but you can also use it for within your or with a smartphone as well. So with that, you could, for example, add a picture. I will do that in a second here, and then enrich the findings with more information. So this is pretty cool and also gives you a lot of possibility in terms of collaboration. So for example, you see it right now. I will now add with my smartphone. I have it here. I'm also in this document. You see it on the top side here that I'm active with 2 users. And for example, I could say I add a picture of the broken box, and it's now uploaded and will emerge here in a second. Should come here. Let me have a look. Here it is. You see the picture? This is I just made with my smartphone here. And you could also edit this directly in line. So I could say, okay, I identified a thing that this one is broken. I can directly put on shapes here and without an additional software. So I could say, okay, this one here is broken. And you can imagine all the different use cases for that. And probably you already have in mind even more use cases, but just want to show you that's pretty easy here. And I could also ask or describe the defect here. The box is broken. And then I could also say, okay, this is my measure, exchange the box. So this is like something I can follow up afterwards as well. And yeah, in general, it goes like this, that the worker moves through this step by step. You have different type of interactions. You could also put in like pictures in the bigger format here. You could also put in videos to explain how the work should be carried out. And with this, I'm already in the last step and say, okay, I want to sign this one. And again, I can do this with different people. So for this case, I'm here with my smartphone again. I'm signing it off and it will emerge here directly in the overview. And I could also request another signature from a different person here. So here we go. There it is. The signature I made with my smartphone here. And you can also say, okay, if I have more comments here afterwards, I can say, okay, I have an idea how to do this process better. You also see that some fields are mandatory and others are not. And based on this, you can either say, okay, I want to make sure that the process can just be completed. You see it here once every mandatory field is filled. So in order to make sure that checklists are carried out the right way, because this is also sometimes the case when I talk to customers or prospects, that they always tell me like, well, listen, Daniel, our checklists for audits are mainly like carried out just in front of when we have like an examination here, and all these checklists needs to be, for example, reworked and like in a certain point in time and are not included in the regular work because it's just too much effort for the people. All right, this is like the execution thing. I will leave this one because I also said like it's about creating new standards, because if I want to change, for example, this document, I can do so. So here you see our platform. Basically, you see the area of orders. You see the order here and the attached document that we had just some seconds ago here. And if I want to change this document, I can go to my document section. And go to this one. And here you see this process from the point of view of an editor. So if I now want to change something, want to add a new step because I want to enrich my my audit, I can just add a new step here and I can select between different types. So this would be like an instruction. So this is please check the following points, and I can select from a toolbox of interactions. So here you see you can insert checkboxes, you can insert image or video feedback, you can insert the signature that we just saw, multiple choice, and so on. And with this, you can just add it up and also create a new process. You can also put in some safety PSA signs here to make sure that also work safety is followed through. And in the end, because there's also something that we experience pretty much, that on the shop floor level, you have a lot of different languages. So like this is in English, for example, right now. If I now want to put this one, or in general, the entire documentation, I want to put this one into another language, I can do so with our automatic translation. So for example, if I want to bring it into German or into Espanol, I just select these two languages and then I say, okay, please translate this one to German. And yeah, in this case, this is the really first time I can evaluate this one, because usually I use pretty different languages. So this looks pretty good from the automatic translation. And you can imagine how much time this saves you, because in the end, the worker can also select the language that fits their skills most. Now I want to do it to English, to Espanol. It's like this. It's yeah, pretty cool feature. And also you can imagine and apply it to probably a lot of different other use cases on the shop floor where you have documentation and checklists needed. And we also have like a review process. So here, for example, I can ask for a review, and also here I can ask for like automatic change note. So what was changed in this process? And this is also with the help of AI. I can create this one. So introduced a new step. I put something in there here, and I added translations. And I can also notify my worker first time before the next execution. So this is really also something which gives you or brings you into the position that you're always up to date. And whenever you have like a process change or in something that documentation has changed, you can notify your people and yeah, make sure and also see which persons have already seen this change. And you can decide whether you want to assign a reviewer or not. And in this case, I can now just publish this without review. And now the documentation is updated in the version 1.2. And with this, the new documentation is available in the shop floor right now. Good. With an eye on the time, I'm stopping here. So I hope you get a first insight about how you can execute these documents and these orders. This software is available on smartphone, on tablet, on stationary devices. And what I also just showed that it's based on like a very easy to use editor to create these documents, and also for you to give like a little bit of imagination what else is possible if you apply it, for example, for work instructions, for maintenance in general, or for assembly, where you have less checks. But I think also the checklist interactions are pretty powerful to improve your audits and also make it more visual.
All right. Thanks a lot, Daniel, for the demonstration. You should be able to see my screen now again.
Yes.
Great. So yeah, maybe let's quickly summarize again what you just said.
Yes. So here we see it once again, so that for us, it's important to provide software to have like this digital guided checklist with all the relevant information to make sure that all the processes are well documented, and that this in itself has a value for other audits, that you can make sure and follow up of all these tasks and make sure that everything was carried out. And also to create standards. What we just saw is that you can make this documentation available to different sites and different areas in your company to make sure that everybody follows the same procedure, and also to use it as a tool for traceability, that whenever a customer has a question or like an authority wants to see whether you supervised or qualified your people the right way, it's easy to have this transparency here. And with this, we also have like two customer examples here. On the one hand side, from a mid-sized German company, which uses our software for like in general the processes on the shop floor to have them in itself compliant to their regulations from the automotive customers. And prior to operations one, especially the equipment inspections were pretty hard, pretty time consuming. And also given the fact that they have like a high turnover in people, that this one was very, very complex on the shop floor side. And they're using operations one pretty broad, and also are able now to run everything a lot faster. And if we have a look on the KPIs, so the audit preparation is much faster because they have all the documentations at hand. They also were able to to make the shop floor nearly paperless with operations one. And in general, they report like an efficiency increase of around 30%, which is like a massive efficiency gain, taking into consideration all the different aspects that play into this. So this is really something remarkable where operations one is used quite broadly. And then we also have another example from a large truck OEM that we are not allowed to name by name, but they are also using us for different audit activities, and they are saving 1/3 of their time per audit they have right now. And this is also quite remarkable here because the time savings are just so massive, and also like a starting point for other use cases. So this is something which was a good starting point at that company. Right now, we are also a standard tool for their audits in different locations, and also the foundation for more use cases that they are carrying out with operations one. And maybe to sum it up also, what is our like philosophy, that we believe that execution or digital execution on the shop floor compounds in a very hard way. So if you digitize all your procedures, on the one hand side, be able to act fast on deviations, you can improve your shop floor operations, and also with digital documentation, you're able to onboard your people faster, you can react or you can implement improvements faster, and all that together builds up operational resilience in your company, and the audit activities are just one pillar out of this one. And this is also something we want to show you to give you a little bit more of a background of operations one, because now you might say, okay, is this just another software for like audits? And the question is, or the answer is definitely no, because we need to, or you need to have a look on this one in a broader scope. So here we see like an example of an architecture without operations one. You have an ERP, might have an DMS, ME system, BI software, and then you have all your different operational areas with a lot of documentation efforts. So may it be manufacturing, assembly, quality, and so on. You have everywhere, you have a lot of paper. And what our ambition and positioning is that we are the execution layer for all these different teams. And you see also here, audits are one piece out of these operations, but the benefit is not just for audits, but it's for the entire operations on your shop floor. So that's why it's also very interesting and well perceived by the IT departments in general, and also operational teams, because we are not just providing operations one in one single use case. You decide in which use cases you want to use operations one. And here we have like a little overview of the different use cases or areas of application. On the bottom right, you see audits, what we just saw, but you also see different other stuff, like in general, knowledge management, training of people on the shop floor, variant specific documentation for the production, for example, in general, inspection documentation, and so on. So all the different areas where you might have still paper in the production is something that we are covering with operations one. Yes, and with that, to sum it up and also to give you an outlook, because what I said, we define ourselves as partner for the manufacturing industry to shape how processes are executed. I want to invite you to our upcoming Future Manufacturing event here in our headquarter base, Frankfurt. It will be on the 18th of June, and here you will experience and get to know a lot of our customers that talk about how they use operations one, how they like solve the challenges and change management in terms of digitalization and so on. And would be happy to see you there in June in Frankfurt.
All right. Thanks a lot, Daniel. We have a bit of time to maybe look into one or two questions, or two or three questions. So let's see. We have the first one here is, what are typical first use cases for digital checklists if we want to have quick wins without huge IT projects?
So basically the checklists are a pretty good starting point, because you have a big benefit directly out of this one, because you need to document all this different stuff. So I would say in general, typical use cases are the ones that we just saw with like audits as well. Like if you have like different, like a Gemba walk, or like in general a process audit, it's pretty cool to use that one, because it's easy to create this document. and you have directly value out of this one. So you create the document, you execute it, you have the automatic protocol out of this one. And also like shift handovers are pretty easy use cases where you can document all, for example, the findings from one shift to communicate it to the next shift. So I think these are quite good use cases to start. But in general, we also have like our own consulting team that identifies the best use cases together with you to get the maximum out of the execution.
Right. Okay. A second question we have here is what is the amount of change management, let's say, that is typical needed on the shop floor when introducing your software?
Yeah, so I think this is something where the general digital development is helping us a lot. So whenever you are in private life, you can nearly do everything with your smartphone right now. And this is something what we see more and more in the companies, that the people on the shop floor, they expect this as well from the operations in a manufacturing company. But in many cases, as I said, people or processes are still based on paper, and that's why the gap is quite big, and the people more and more really demand this one to have a digital. And so that's why the change management efforts are becoming less and less with like in developing of digitalization in private lives. This was different in the past when we started the company. It was more effort sometimes to convince the people to shift to digital way, to not to have like fears of being controlled, but it's about making your life as a worker easier. But in our experience is like that you should include the people by when you like implement software, and in general on the shop floor with operations one, we help as well with dedicated customer success managers. So people that help your teams to implement software, to train your people, and to also listen to potential fears. But from my view, this is not an issue right now anymore. Of course, you have your like more experienced people that always say, I don't need this one. I don't want to be controlled, but it's not about control of the people. It's about making it easier and then to create more productivity with like same workforce.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then one last question here, and I think that goes back a bit to your demonstration that you showed. How can we ensure correct role and responsibility management to stay compliant?
Yes. Yeah, so this is something we are covering pretty hard with like our rights and roles management, so that every user has a specific role and you can assign, for example, as well qualifications to the specific role, that you also make sure that the people can just carry out the process that they are allowed to do. So this is something that especially our enterprise customers required already early on, and now brings us in the position that we have a very solid system there to make sure that user management and everything is standard as of today, and also brings you into the position to tailor your contents to the specific roles that are in the system, and to make it there also easier, so that an expert is maybe not like don't seize all the detailed information or explanations that a rookie needs, for example.
All right, then thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today.
All right.
And
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Sarah. So I hope also to the audience, I hope you got a first insight what Operations One can do for you. And yeah, if you have more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And yeah, with this, I wish you a successful week.
thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye bye.